Hey everybody, it's Marty, the JavaScript party, and my buddy Rhett here. And we're coding. That's the primary thing we're doing. And Rhett is causing chaos, which is her primary job. I think every video I sort of give a different reason why she's in the videos. And I think it's sort of the reason to do that is to, man, that is just so bright. The reason to do that is because there are a lot of different reasons why she's in the videos. And so I think it's a good idea just to be like, and she's here today because of this. And so today's reason for Rhett to be in the videos is because, she's a living creature and she's in our living room and she can't, me and my wife both do a lot of these sorts of things. My wife spends most of her day like on TikTok, making lives where she does some crafting and stuff like that. She makes these really cool tumblers, and so my our so Rhett hears her down there talking, but Rhett can't see what's going on, and the problem is she can't really go down there because there are chemicals and things. And one thing, birds are very there's some ways that they're much more robust than mammals, but then there's some ways, particularly in the lungs, that they are a lot less robust than mammals. Because as mammals, my opinion is, and I've heard that as mammals, we're sort of stuck where we're at. So if there's smoke or something around, our bodies have evolved in such a way that um, we can take we can handle that. But birds can fly away, so they have not evolved that same level of ability to deal with bad chemicals and things like that. So, but we don't do chemicals here. At least all the chemicals we do are inside our brain, moving around and stuff like that, as we're doing all these things. So it's better for her life to get to be in here. So, and that is important, not just uh, the other side effect benefits of her being here. And then speaking of things like that, so one of the things I do every day is, like, if you ever see my browser come up, you'll see one of the places I go every day is LinkedIn, and I kind of read things and all that. I will say that, so I read a thing today from a senior developer who is then, it was kind of applauded by a bunch of CEOs and VPs and things like that, and people that make a lot of money. Speaking of that, I went to this 80s retro thing that this guy took me and my wife and him and his wife. We would double date, and he bought tickets for us to all go to that, and it was absolutely amazing. It was probably more expensive than I would have been comfortable paying, so it was nice. But he is someone who did really well in finance and all that. So the things I'm not in finance, but in IT and all that. So the advice that I'm gonna about to give is not financial advice. It's probably actually, it may even be bad advice from a financial perspective. Um, but I will. So this LinkedIn that I was reading, the guy was basically saying, I may be misreading this, but I'm pretty sure that, to sum up, what he was saying was that, hey, don't worry about the details about coding. Uh, and specifics about coding, but what you should focus on is using, like, finding the right technologies and then using, like, artificial intelligence to fill in any gaps that you have. And I do think that there is a lot of, like, um, I think what I think there's truth to that, and probably maybe from a financial, like, earning money or starting a business and getting very wealthy or something like that perspective, that probably is the best perspective. But if you want to be like a craftsman, like someone who knows how to do things and really understands things, like when you go through your day to day, like if you feel like you enjoy living in a way in which, like, you have a strong grasp of all the details of everything you're working on and stuff like that. If that's just sort of how you're wired, then I would say that that's probably not the ideal way for you to go. If you just enjoy working and understanding the fine details, and there's nothing wrong with that, with being like, hey, I want to understand everything, and then I want to talk to ChatGPT, and then I want to be able to recognize when Chat GPT has fine details wrong because I understand it better than Chat GPT does. Like if that's the person you want to be, then that is not. And it's not all about like earning money and all that, like, honestly, I always say whenever I do an interview, I would code every day if you couldn't make 1 cent coding. So if that's the kind of person you're looking for, like if you're looking for someone that's going to come in here and just really be into the technologies and understand what's going on, like that, if that's what you're looking for, then I'm your guy. But if you're looking for someone who's just gonna sort of like not the right set of words, if you look at someone who's more focused on like crafting high level solutions and just sort of making it work, so that for the user, so that the end user can accomplish their goals. um, you know there's nothing wrong with that, and definitely there's a lot of stuff for people like that. But anyways, that is not what we're here for. Well, that may not be what you're here for. Maybe that is what you're here for. I actually don't know. There's a good solid 2 people that watch these videos on a regular basis, and then like, I don't know, most of the videos get watched by 8 or 9 people. I have absolutely no idea why they're here. But for the 8 or 7 to 10 people that like just randomly fell into this video, that probably is not what you're here for. So now I'll go to the part that you may be here for, and that is that we are going to get npm our ThreeJS in our code, in our Angular application, and with the goal of implementing this code here. And we'll see if we get there today. We may or may not. But the first line of this is always goes sideways. If you're trying to do this, like if you're trying to do this next issue may be what caused your problem. Okay, so in the last video we did an npm install. We basically did this, and we installed 3. And then I got all sidetracked on something. So I actually have removed the use of this imports of this Angular. So I'm actually just going to delete that now. That's not really why we're here, but I'm going to replace it with this import 3. And so what you'll see if you're using Visual Studio and all that is you'll see that it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And the thing is it is in my node module. So I could not find module for 3JS. I have installed it, but it doesn't know what I'm doing. So typically, if you see a blue thing here, it tells you that it has something, and that is not useful. Usually when it's blue, it has something useful. That was not useful because it's just saying, hey, I could, oh, okay, here, there we go. So it did have something useful, but I had to click it multiple times. And the useful thing is this install the types of 3. So I think the whole error is a bit misleading because it's saying that it can't find it, but that's not true. Its problem is, well, so now the error has changed. So since we first started this video and I added that line, at first it was like, I can't find it. Now it has changed this argument and it's saying, hey, we don't know how to interact with 3JS because we do not have types for 3. So like there are types. Angular has types for the browser, for anything that is in the browser, but it doesn't really have types for third-party things. So your job is to install something so that it knows how to interact with 3. And that is like, I don't know. I can't think of a really good way to say that because like it's just like, hey, all I'm trying to do is import something. That thing that I'm importing is in nodes. And now it's saying, yeah, well, yeah, I don't know what to do with 3. I just don't. So, like, I know what to do with Angular Core, but I don't know what to do with 3. And so now I think if we hit the mouse, okay, so we hit this mouse over and we have that. So that is one option, is we could just click this button, install 3 types. And then the other option would be to do the instructions that it gave here. And then one thing that we can do is we can actually save this. And then we get the exact same error in the browser that is pointing at localhost 4200, which is kind of nice because it's a little bit easier to copy like this here. Now, it doesn't know. Like there's like sort of a standard way of creating types for libraries, and this is the standard way of doing it. It doesn't actually know like if anyone ever did this. So like if you included a a library and no one has ever created the types for it, this wouldn't work. Or it is technically possible that somebody could have created types for it, but they did it in a non-standard way. And if that is the case, then you might have to do something different. And then there's like another assumption here, and that is that whoever created the types went to npm and set everything up so that npm can install it. That's not guaranteed either. But fortunately, we don't have to deal with any of those here. I've done this dozens of times, and we can just hit copy here, and we can go to a terminal. I'm just going to hit CLS just to make room, and oh, control, I hit the little Windows button, hit that. So you could also type npm install, and I don't know, I talked a lot about this save dev versus the types.3. Once we get done with this, what will happen is we will have in here, we will have a new dependency in this area, in this dev dependency. If that dev wasn't here, then it would show up here. I do not believe, and I'm not sure about this, and what I'm saying it might be true today, but it may not always be true. I do not believe there are any negative side effects of installing it up here. I think that if you install it up there, none of these types would ever affect the output of the code. So I think this is just more of in the context of Angular, this is more of just so that in your mind you can kind of figure out which pieces of code belong whether it belongs here or there. And like, I think if 3 was down here in the dev dependencies, we still wouldn't have any issues. I don't think there would be any negative side effects. I think everything would still work. And I don't think it changes a thing in the world that 3 is up here. And I actually talked about that, I think either in the last video or the video before that. But I think for me, in my mind, it's like, ThreeJS is like an absolute important piece of ThreeJS code will end up in the final code. I think that's what I'm saying in my own mind mentally. But ThreeJS types will not end up in the code. Nothing from TypeScript will actually end up in the code. TypeScript might influence the JavaScript that ends up in the code, but none of the TypeScript will end up in the final code, production code. But anyway, so I'll hit enter now. Oops. Hit enter. I don't think I did anything accidentally in the package. So now it's installing this. This one doesn't take too long because it's pretty small and it doesn't have like a lot of dependencies. But so it usually goes pretty quick. It's definitely going longer than I would have thought, but it is done. Now, one of the things that has always messed me up, and I don't know if it's still necessary, but in older versions of ThreeJS, like the problem doesn't go away. Like you still have the problem. So I would just be making changes. Maybe even, I think the first time I have spent hours and hours. Maybe the first few times I spent hours and hours making changes, trying to get this to go away, like hit and save, and it just would not go away. Or, but see, they have since fixed that. So I guess that's not as big of an issue now. But so now we have our ThreeJS and we have it imported. Now it's saying that I should create a width based on the Windows inner height and Windows inner width. Now I do not believe that. I know this code won't work as written, and just because it doesn't fit into like the TypeScript the class. Like this is written to be like just in a function as opposed to a class. Now this window used to not work at all, and used to have to do like sort of an interesting. Well, there was a few options to get access to the window um, object. I don't think you need it anymore. Maybe you do need it. Well, I don't know. Let's see if this works. Let's hit save and just make sure that this is going to work. Now, what we're going to do is, and you know what? We actually had something that broke. I'm going to create a constructor. We had something that broke when we went from Angular 18 to Angular 19, and maybe this was it. Console.log. For some reason, like it couldn't calculate the size of the div. Um, uh, so I'm just going to say the width. And this is probably the biggest reason why, like, just sort of blindly using, like what I was talking about with the LinkedIn thing, like just sort of blindly just using stuff that's out there is the problem that exists and all that is the problem is that you don't, um, let's go to console. Okay, so yeah, that appeared to work. That in like Angular 15, 16, I'm 99% sure that wouldn't have worked. But now it works and that's a good thing. All right, so next. Let's try this. Let's try this next line. We're going to create a camera and we are going to set its perspective. Um, well, actually, it'll be a little bit easier. I don't think we can do this in the constructor, but we'll see. Um, so we definitely need to do this dot and this dot. Okay, now I'm just going to close this down so we have a little bit more space to work with. When you mouse over, it will tell you. So basically, the FOV is the camera's fulcrum, vertical, and so we set that to 70. I think that's like if you were looking at the camera, like the the amount of space that you can see with inside of it based on like a angle from the camera. So like when you're looking through your eyes, you can kind of see. I believe that that's what that's about. Aspect is like how it's distorted. So like um, the way if it's long and wide, it'll alter the way it renders things based on the length and the that aspect. So it can, if you don't get it, if you don't match it up directly with, so this is prescriptive, right? If you don't match it up um, to the amount of space that's there, everything will look distorted. Um, and then near is like the closest thing that you'll show, and far is the farthest thing you'll show. So if you created, like in the default is 2000. So if you create something at like Y or Z is in and out, Z equals 5000, it just won't even render it because you've the set is near and far. So anyways, that's what we are. So we won't show anything that's closer to the camera than 0.01 on the XYZ scale, like in the distance from us, and anything that's farther than 10. So if we put something out at 12 or 15, um, and then we're going to set the perspective of the width and the height, um, and then we'll set the camera. And let's just see if this works. And basically, this works just means that we don't get a console log error. Let's see. I'm going to hit inspect and then dock this to the bottom. Okay, so we didn't get any kind of error, so it seems like it knew exactly what 3 is and all that. Since we're just working straight on in the top app, I don't know, there could be, we might run into timing issues. Um, so now, basically, I believe the next line is I don't know why this is. So in our camera, we're going to set the position of along the Z axis. So in ThreeJS, the Z axis is in and out from us. So basically, we're saying we're going to bring the Z of the camera to the 1 position. So it'll be, so it'll bring it like if this is the origin, it'll bring it, and the camera, you're sitting at the camera, and I'm sitting over here, it'll bring it closer to me and farther from you, because you're at the negative part of the origin based on my current perspective. So let's just make sure that that works. Um, and hit save. I actually truly enjoy doing the code in a very like step by step process, just to make sure everything works. We could just copy everything, but I don't know. I just don't like that. So now we're just going to create a ThreeJS scene. Um, a scene is something is sort of a high level object that you put things in. And so now we're going to create a and just sort of everything's good. Now I'm going to create a material and a geometry. So neither a material nor a geometry can create is anything that would be seen on the screen. It's part of something called a mesh that you would see on the screen. So, and then I guess it does make sense to spend a little bit of time on that. So we're creating a box geometry, which is 0.2, 0.2, 0.2. So basically we're kind of setting up our little world so that everything is teeny. We're working in teeny things. You know, our camera's only out one. So let's imagine we're dealing with feet here, or uh, yeah. So I'm in the United States, and we still are on the English system, and so we have feet, which is about a third of a meter. So let's say we're about a third of a meter out that we're dealing in feet, and then the thing we're building is zero point 0.2 meter, 2.2 feet, zero point 0.2 feet, and zero point 0.2 feet. We could also be like, oh, okay, we're 1 inch out, and everything's 0.2 inches, 0.2 inches, 0.2 inches. And we could also be, I just lost power for a second. How weird. Or we could be uh, a meter out, and everything's zero point 0.2 meters, zero point 0.2 meters, zero point 0.2 meters. It's whatever you want to think in your head. It doesn't care. It's just units. Um, so now we're doing this. We won't see anything because all we did was kind of create the internal parts of a mesh. And these vocabulary words sort of make sense. So now we're going to create a mesh, and we are going to add it to the scene. So a mesh can take, I think it's just the two things. Like it could take a geometry and a material, and that's it. So it executes the constructor, and you give it a geometry. Oh, and I guess you can send it one of these event maps, which I've never done, and it doesn't even is not documented what an event map even is. So I don't know what that's about. Um, but right now it's saying, hey, we're creating a box geometry and a mesh normal material, which is exactly right. Um, the nice thing about the normal material is it doesn't need light in order to be rendered. So I believe that I don't know if this will actually do anything. Um, so it did not do anything. Oh, and that's because we haven't told it to actually. So it created a scene. It has created a camera, a ThreeJS scene and a camera, um, but it hasn't done anything. And then it took the mesh and added it to the scene. So now the scene is in the. So now the mesh is in the scene. I'm guessing we need to add the camera to it. Camera. Let's see. I don't see why we do that. I guess and this is interesting because see I built out a whole nother application. It does all kinds of stuff with ThreeJS, and I never really put it together that you'd never add the camera to the scene. um, I don't even know why the camera even exists if you think about it. Like, I don't know if ThreeJS just sort of looks for a camera. So we created a new camera. Let's see. I'm just curious. And see, these are like the first time I ever built this stuff. I never. Oh, here we go. When we do the renderer, um, we tell it what the camera is. Okay, so I never. That's really interesting to me, right? So I always thought the camera was inside the scene. Um, that was part of a scene is where the camera is, but no, it appears that the camera is outside the scene. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a renderer. And this is like just all the code that it takes to write. We're going to set the height and the width to the full height and width of the actual window that we're looking at. And then we're going to tell it that this is the code that it should run, and it should attempt to run this 60 times a second. And then we are going to take this code and we are going to append it to the existing document. So this kind of is very unusual in an Angular application. This document body, you don't usually do stuff like that very often. So it might be like, if you're an Angular developer, that might be very weird to you. Okay, so of course we have some scoping issues. So like I would say that a lot of this stuff, like, I understood, like, but I couldn't talk about it, and I couldn't really verbalize it. So so our animate function does not exist. And this is another thing that you don't see. Like, you'll see this sort of concept of creating an animate function, or like a function like this, a lot in JavaScript, and you'll see it a lot in Angular 1 applications. And so you'll see it a lot in applications in which, like, that were ported from Angular 1. But like, if just a native built from scratch Angular application, it will rarely not do this. You will rarely see something like this where we create like a function that is like an object that we pass into something as a, like, just its own little function that's out here. I've seen that very rarely. So once we added our function, it did recognize the animate, but it is upset about the fact that we never said what this time was going to be. And I don't know why it's throwing an error, and I don't believe it will compile like this. And it seems like it should, but what we could do is we could say any, and I believe it'll compile. And that is always like something that is available to you, and I think it'll probably work. And it did. Woo! Okay. Smell. Stop and smell the roses. So that's pretty cool, but you probably don't want to use an any here. You probably want to actually say that it's a number. And that doesn't make any difference, and it works. And then, in order, at this point, it probably makes a lot of sense. I don't know. We'll talk about the hello world and space and time next. But it does, I think, make sense at this point to see if the unit tests break. They may break, they may not. I don't think they'll break. I don't think that the unit test will care that that we imported. It might, because it's in the constructor. Yeah, I'll be very interested to see, because I don't think in our unit test that we import 3. Actually, since it's such a basic application at this point, we can actually look at things and understand things. Like, a lot of times when I've worked at places, we have like unit tests, and it's just like how it all works is just going to be so convoluted. So let's go ahead and take a look at our unit tests real quick. Actually, let me look at the time. Oh, yeah, I was supposed to go out with my wife 15 minutes ago, so I'm in trouble. Anyways, and this video is 30 minutes long, so that's too long. Happy coding, everybody. Bye.